장미란 씨가 제주 숙소를 나선 건 지난 5월 12일 밤. 경찰은 휴대전화 위치 변화나 추가 통화 내역이
How does someone go missing for months, only for the search to finally start after the internet blows up? And what happens when the very people sworn to protect you turn out to be your biggest threat? What really happened in Jeju? Before we tear this all down piece by piece, if you want to support Trace Zero so we can keep bringing you deeper, long-form investigations, consider joining Trace Circle. You'll get exclusive stickers featuring my face to use in the live chats and comment sections. I'll see you there. Hey Tracers, Sean here, and welcome back to Trace Zero. Today, we're diving into a massive, highly charged case out of Korea. Honestly, I didn't expect to be making a video about this. It's one of those cases that feels completely absurd, like something that has no business happening in 2026, especially not in Korea. But this actually happened. It is genuinely shocking, and frankly, it's unbelievable how badly the Korean police dropped the ball on this one. What the hell actually went down? Buckle up, because you never know how deep this hole goes. Let's get into it. This whole thing kicked off around August 19th, just a few days ago. Out of nowhere, posts like this started popping up, sharing a missing persons flyer. According to the poster, the woman they were looking for was 37-year-old Jang Miran, and the last place she was seen was in Jeju. At first, I honestly thought, well, she'll probably turn up in a few days, or maybe she was totally fine and just didn't want to deal with her family. I really didn't think it was going to turn into a case this serious, but as it turns out, she was found dead. And get this, her family had already reported her missing to the police long before that. But the police just closed the case without any clear explanation. Here is how it all went down. Miran was last seen leaving her place on May 13th, heading somewhere. Just 2 days later, on May 15th at around 6:43 p.m., her boyfriend filed a missing persons report because he couldn't get in touch with her at all. So, the boyfriend reports it, and not long after, the Jeju police actually show up to talk to him. They start investigating, asking all the usual questions, what she looked like, what she was wearing, when they last spoke, and stuff like that. After that, Miran's boyfriend and family waited for updates from the police for 2 whole months. Now, you might be thinking, didn't they check in with the cops during those 2 months? Of course they did, but the police kept telling them, oh, we managed to get in touch with Miran, but she just doesn't want to talk to her family. So, just sit tight. That was the excuse the police gave, which is the only reason the family and her boyfriend just waited around for 2 months. Then, right around July 17th, her boyfriend went back to the police because she was still missing and nowhere to be found. The Jeju police took his report, but then they realized, wait, this was already reported back in May. Look, the case is already closed. We can't touch this. Nope, denied. Because they got rejected, Miran's younger sibling, who lives in Seoul, went ahead and filed a report with the Seoul police on July 19th. That's when the case was finally reopened for a proper investigation. Like I mentioned earlier, her boyfriend first reported her missing on May 15th at 6:43 p.m. Well, get this. At 9:06 p.m., that exact same night, the handling officer just closed the case, claiming it was resolved, even though the police never contacted Miran and never even met her. When the family later asked about it, the cops just lied and said, oh, we already reached out to her, claiming she simply refused to talk to her family. So, in the span of just 2 hours, the police shut the whole thing down with zero evidence. But let's pick back up with the timeline. Like I said, after her sibling filed the report in Seoul on July 19th, the police finally started digging into it again. And it wasn't until August 8th that the Jeju police actually realized, oh crap, this case is way more serious than we thought. Look, when an adult goes off the grid or is unreachable, the golden window is the first 24 hours. The real critical window for a case like this is about 3 weeks, because after that, CCTV footage starts getting wiped or important data expires. But up until August 8th, the Jeju police basically did jack squat. Then they finally woke up and went, I guess we should do something? Oh well, I guess we're way behind schedule, but whatever, better late than never. That's when the Jeju police finally started moving. But even then, they weren't exactly rushing. About 11 days later, on August 19th, because the local police were dragging their feet so badly, Miran's cousin finally took matters into their own hands, made this poster, and blasted it all over the internet. It wasn't until August 20th, the next day, that the Jeju police finally mobilized about 140 people, including dive teams and the maritime police, to actually search for her. Just think about that. The disappearance was first reported on May 15th, but they didn't really start searching until August 20th. And here is where things get really heartbreaking. On August 22, a body was discovered in Jeju, and the media immediately went into a frenzy. People started fearing the worst, that the woman everyone was searching for had been found dead. Panic started setting in everywhere. But it turns out the body found on August 22 wasn't Jang Miran. And on August 24th, right around 10:46 a.m., Jang Miran's body was finally found in Jeju. Naturally, this sent the public into a massive rage against the Korean police, especially the officer handling the case, who had shut it down just 2 to 3 hours after it was reported, with zero valid reason. Right after her body was discovered on August 24th, details started leaking about Police Officer A, the guy in charge of her case. Turns out, he was already facing disciplinary action for failing to do his job. That happened on August 14th. And it wasn't until August 21st that the Korean police finally changed their system for closing adult missing person cases. Before August 21st, if an adult went missing, the handling officer had the sole authority to close the case just by writing down a reason. And once it was closed, it didn't even need approval or review from a superior. But starting on the 21st, that policy changed. Now, whenever a cop wants to close a missing person case, a supervisor actually has to review and approve it first before it can be officially closed. So, basically, Officer A knew a report had come in about a missing person, but he had total power to sweep it under the rug. Once he closed it, nobody else was going to double-check his work. It just makes it look like he completely blew off his duties. On top of that, news broke that starting August 11th, Officer A had already been stripped of his previous duties because he got transferred to a different department. Why? Because back on July 22nd, Officer A had illegally entered a women's restroom inside the police station. Just imagine that a male cop sneaking into the women's bathroom with sexual intent. We don't know the exact details of whether he was peeping, planting a hidden camera, or what. A police officer pulling a stunt like that? And it wasn't until August 22nd that Officer A was actually caught and detained. Like I mentioned earlier, a body was found on August 22nd, so the police clearly realized things were blowing up in their faces. The moment that body turned up and realizing that he or someone in their ranks completely dropped the ball, they slapped him in handcuffs right away. And to make matters even more infuriating, on August 24th, Officer A threw a fit because he didn't think he should be locked up under mandatory detention. So on the 24th, he was actually released. Legally speaking, they figured he wasn't considered a flight risk, meaning the investigation could continue without keeping him behind bars. Meaning, he didn't need to stay locked up. Whenever they needed him, they'd just summon him to the station for questioning. But right after Jang Miran's body was found on August 24th, even wilder news dropped. Back on the 2nd of July 2026, there was another missing person report, a 60-year-old man. Again, it happened in Jeju, and again, Officer A was the one who used his authority to close the case. And as it turns out, this was the exact man whose body was found on August 22. Just think about that. Both victims were Korean, and both were found dead in Jeju. What makes this whole thing so sickening is that because the police dragged their feet, all the CCTV footage and critical evidence that could have solved this was completely wiped out. Because in Korea, most security cameras automatically overwrite their footage after 1 month. So, for example, if you're looking at footage from the 1st through the 31st, as soon as the 1st of the next month rolls around, the footage from the 1st of the previous month gets deleted, leaving you with just the 2nd through the 31st. A day moves forward and the 2nd gets erased, meaning the retention window is generally capped at 30 days. But because this case was practically left to gather dust for a whole month, all the crucial CCTV footage and data were completely gone. The very last trace they could find was from May 16th, Miran's phone signal pinged for the final time at 9:44 in the morning near the port in Halim, Jeju. That was it. And what's even scarier is that those 2 cases weren't the only ones Officer A swept under the rug. There were 3 other cases, too. Because of all this mess, the Korean police finally started reviewing other adult missing person cases across the country, and the total number came out to a staggering 298. A famous Korean profiler named Bae Sang-hoon weighed in on the situation, pointing out that this kind of disaster was practically waiting to happen, like a ticking time bomb, so nobody should really be surprised. He explained that for the longest time, when an adult went missing, the whole investigation usually got dumped on just one single officer. Everything depended entirely on that one person's competence. If the guy was sharp, you might get saved. If he was lazy, you were on your own. Another massive flaw Bae Sang-hoon pointed out is the systemic mindset of the Korean police. They just don't believe that adults actually go missing on purpose or foul play. Whenever someone files a report like, hey, an adult is missing, the police immediately brush it off with, oh, they probably just went off somewhere. Oh, they're probably just on vacation. They completely fail to treat it as a potential crime from the get-go. Around the same time, Jang Miran's boyfriend came forward to share something crucial. Up until her final moments, Miran showed 0 signs of someone who wanted to take her own life or end things. Plus, Miran was found in a palm tree grove. And this wasn't just any ordinary palm grove like the ones you might picture. The trees in this specific area in Jeju where her body turned up are massive with razor-sharp leaves and trunks, meaning it's basically somewhere nobody would ever wander into, just for fun. Especially considering Miran wasn't even wearing proper shoes, just sandals. Who on earth would willingly walk into a place like that? Yet, despite all of this, the Jeju police keep insisting there are no signs of a crime or foul play here, so we can't call this a major murder case. It's simply a suicide. They were saying this even before the autopsy results came out. And according to local residents living right around that area in Jeju, walking into that palm grove to commit suicide makes 0 sense. If you tried to hang yourself there, you'd just get shredded to pieces by all the sharp branches and jagged trunks first. So, the police's official narrative just doesn't hold water. Right around the same time, news broke that a total of 4 bodies had been found. Aside from the 2 we already talked about, the other 2 were men in their 60s and 70s. And all of these bodies turned up between August 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, which makes you wonder how many more bodies are still undiscovered out there in Jeju, and all of these were found in just a 2-day span. If they actually bothered to properly search the island, who knows how many more they might find. To put things into perspective, every year in Jeju, the number of missing adult cases gets dangerously close to 1,000. Now, we haven't even hit the end of 2026 yet, but the numbers are already piling up, and honestly, it wouldn't be surprising if it creeps close to that 1,000 mark again. A lot of young people love traveling or living out in Jeju on their own. Jeju is a massive island, and the catch is that while the main city area is pretty densely packed, once you head out toward the outskirts or the remote sides of the island, everything is super spread out, making it incredibly tough to track someone down if they're traveling alone. That's why most travelers have to rent a car, because a lot of spots are nearly impossible to reach using public transportation. It's not like Seoul or other packed cities where everything is lined up right next to each other. Here you've got a cafe, and then the next cafe or restaurant is a whole kilometer away. And there's one more thing I really want to emphasize here. According to profiler Bae Sang-hoon, when an adult goes missing, the absolute golden window is 12 hours. Because if someone has been snatched by someone else, once you cross that 12-hour mark, the chances skyrocket that they'll be murdered, they aren't being held for ransom anymore. Past 12 hours, it almost always ends in a homicide. But whether the police actually mobilize to search and how many resources they send out entirely hinges on that one single officer assigned to the case. Alright, tracers, that's the breakdown of this case. I'm sure there's a ton of extra chatter floating around the internet right now, but I didn't want to include all of it because a lot of those online posts are based on just random comments from random people. That doesn't necessarily mean they're wrong, but I didn't want to spread unverified or exaggerated claims either. I'd much rather stick to facts straight from official news outlets and Korean media broadcasts. If you start relying on internet comments, things get way too messy and out of hand. But one thing every single person in Korea completely agrees on is Jeju Island is now seen as an unsafe place, especially since Jeju is a region where foreign tourists can enter without a visa. Unlike mainland Korea, where citizens of certain countries need a visa to enter, for instance, Americans need a visa to visit Seoul, they can just fly straight into Jeju, visa-free. So a lot of Koreans are probably thinking, well, since Jeju gets so many foreign tourists coming in without visas, heinous crimes like this are bound to happen. That's the kind of image the island is getting right now. Now, I can't say for sure whether this case actually has any connection to visa-free foreign tourists or not. We honestly have no way of knowing. But the one thing I want to drive home, loud and clear, is how unacceptable it is to have lazy cops. Cops who take the job just for a paycheck rather than a genuine drive to save or protect people have no business wearing the badge. Being a police officer carries an immense social responsibility, and the officers who uphold that duty with honor are the ones who truly deserve our respect. But individuals like this are the ones dragging the reputation of the entire police force right through the mud. And I'm sure that no matter where you go in the world, you'll find great cops, just like you'll find cops who are absolute trash. Because of this whole scandal, people are even starting to wonder, could Officer A be tied to shady groups, underground syndicates, or even mafia rings involved in things like murder or illegal organ trafficking? Who the hell knows at this point? Just look at this single cop, and already 2 victims are tied directly to him. Just imagine what those 2 grieving families went through, both of them desperately waiting for answers from the police. After this blew up, the families revealed that they actually trusted what Officer A told them. He straight up lied to their faces, saying, "Oh, we got in touch with them. They just don't want to talk to their family. Sit tight, they'll reach out eventually." That's the crap the police fed them. And the families believed it because it came from an officer of the law. But behind closed doors, what the police actually did was shut down the case with zero justification. And now, both of those victims have been found dead. And what makes it even more infuriating is how the police casually brush it off. Oh, as for Jang Miran, her body was indeed found, but we see no signs of any criminal activity. So what, are they implying she was just randomly summoned by God while hanging out in a deadly thicket of trees or something? It makes absolutely no sense. The case of Jang Miran and the endless string of red flags in Jeju Island really open our eyes to how fragile protection for missing persons can be, and how fatal official negligence can truly get. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you think this was purely gross negligence, or is there something bigger being covered up? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and as always, if you're still watching this, maybe you're looking for the same thing I am.